This week's episode is brought to you by Casey Hewlett and Andre Elias Rodriguez-Soares. Thank you, Casey Hewlett and Andre Elias Rodriguez-Soares. It's with the continued support of listeners just like you that keeps the multicolored tubs full of highly gelatinous life forms which flavor the audio waves you're hearing right now with deeply embedded astral encryption that induces synchronicity at high frequency. If you'd like to adopt a highly gelatinous life form or just hear the second half of this episode, please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 gets you not just access to our second half of all our shows, more than doubling the Whole Rabbit content. I'll send you a 5x5 vinyl sticker of our Big Bunny cover art and the secret keys to our Discord server, where you can hear about the unfolding drama of Darth Dingus's car anytime, day or night. On this week's episode, we glance up briefly from the seemingly endless toil of daily life to re-examine the conditions we were promised in heaven. We discuss the history and origin of various religious beliefs concerning heaven, exploring the evolution of what Abrahamic faiths promise their most devout followers, developing alongside Greek culture and its reminiscence to those of ancient Egypt. In the extended show, we venture into Aztec paradise, the esoteric symbolism of Christian heaven and revelations, uncover the Houris of the Quran, and finally get a definitive answer about whether or not there is sex in heaven. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the show.
What about UFOs?
No, I didn't see any of that either. It was daytime. It was pretty cold, too.
Did you have a good jacket?
Yes, it's called drugs.
It's called whiskey. Mama used to dab it on her areolas to deal with the pain of having a baby so ugly.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we don't just threaten our enemies and lukewarm followers with unspeakable suffering for all eternity. Nay, we make sure to enjoy the pleasures of paradise from our VIP section in the sky, crusted with diamonds, drunk on heavenly wine, squished by the delicate feet of our God-issued concubines within full eyesight of the damned who are beaten with chains of fire, watching as we look on, laughing with holy indignation between petulant smirks of self-satisfaction for all eternity, because this week we're discussing the amenities in paradise, where the after-party never ends. Most people, they just call it heaven. I'm your host, Luke Madrid, Hack Rabbit. This week, Mari-sama is still deployed in the field, but I will be joined by co-hosts, the melted medium of madness, Malachor 5.
Hola.
And the heavenly hottie of Hathor, Hecka Astra.
Hello. Did that come through?
The whole control board at NASA's like out of their seats. We fucking landed on the moon, man.
I just have to call you that every show now. There are 3 things every little kid knows. 1, blood is actually blue. 2, girls pee out of their butts. And 3, what heaven and hell are really like.
Oh boy.
You ever notice that? Little kids know what heaven is like.
Even if they never went to church.
Yeah.
I like that idea. It's also showcased in Death Stranding on why they use babies, but they're closer to the other side because they're kind of new.
Still pure.
You mean they're not full of original sin?
No, they are. They're very, very full of original sin. That's why we dunk them in water. And speaking of dunking babies in water, I went to a Nazarene preschool. They did church service and stuff. I remember thinking the idea of eternity, even in heaven, was a bit frightening. Does it really go on and on and on? Like the end credits of Lamb Chop's Play Along for all eternity?
Yes, it goes on and on, my friend.
And it's a lamb. You have to do what it says.
Forever.
Does that make Sherry Lewis the demiurge?
Yes. Heaven is a place we take for granted. After the brilliance of youth has begun to fade and the excitement of tomorrow is frozen over into an alien wilderness of despondent tedium, we hold fast in our hearts the childhood promise of arriving at the pearly gates and valet parking outside the great hotel in the sky everybody has always simply called heaven. But what's inside? Is the pool heated? Is Leviathan sushi being served in the banquet hall as anticipated? Will it really be the 5-star experience we saw advertised, somewhere? While it may not come as a surprise that many cultures have an idea of heaven, they are remarkably diverse. And even the ones we think we know the best deserve us having a closer inspection at the hospitality agreement.
I'm trying to remember what that movie was with Meryl Streep, where they're like in limbo and they're getting judged, and some people get like really wicked hotels and other people get like shit hotels.
Defending your life?
Defending Your Life, yeah.
I think that's an interesting moment to bring up that like various cultures have, I guess, a certain criteria of what heaven is. And it's not always one thing across even a single culture. Sometimes that single culture has many different places in the afterlife.
Like there's multiple different ways in which you can guarantee getting there, and the place itself is described differently.
Those specifics are why we're able to talk about Judaistic, Christian, pre-Columbian Mesoamerican concept of this, but they're different. You know, it's not an all-encompassing thing. So we're not trying to get everybody under like, oh, all of heaven is one idea, and no matter how you cut it, it's not different. I'm saying it is different.
Yeah, because there's so many different beliefs regarding heaven or the afterlife.
If you subscribe to an Abrahamic faith, you might think to look for the first edition of the Heaven Hospitality Agreement in the Torah, or the 5 books of Moses, which include Genesis and are the oldest books in the Bible. Looking here first, we find the afterlife in heaven mentioned exactly 0 times. Instead, we find all humans, regardless of their accomplishments or faithfulness to God, take their final resting place in the shadowy abode under the earth known as Sheol, a mausoleum-like place of dreary idleness, weakness, and ruin. Even Jacob, the patriarch, declares he will go down to Sheol, still mourning the death of his son Joseph. Originally, what happens in Sheol is beyond the control or care of God, just like Vegas. Inhabitants of Sheol were known as Rephaim, a type of ghost. More directly translated, it means weak or powerless one. This reflects the idea that the soul, or nefesh, as it's known, was never truly annihilated, but just lost energy from the vibrance of life to sickness beyond death and into a state of torpid, heavy sluggishness only the dead and smokers of strong marijuana know about. So couch-locked are the dead, in fact, that in Isaiah and Job, it is spoken that the Rephaim may never rise again. However, as the religion grew, so did the idea of Sheol. In Psalms 49:15, it is said, "But God will redeem my soul from the power of Sheol, and will receive me." At one point, King Saul conjures upon Samuel from Sheol to divine for him the future, which he does. By the 6th century, Sheol began to be seen as a place where enemies might be sent and punished. Apocryphal texts just 300 years later began to separate communities in Sheol between the righteous and unrepentant sinners. After the destruction of the Second Temple, rabbinical Judaism began to shake things up even more. For starters, the Sadducees didn't even believe in an afterlife, where the Pharisees, the folks Jesus would take his cues from, believed that the righteous would be resurrected with their physical bodies to dwell in the Olam Haba, or the world to come, presumably. This is where the Leviathan sushi is being served and explains why it needs to be salted. It's not metaphoric fish jerky, it's actual fish jerky. Well, some rabbis taught that the Olam Haba was a spiritual dimension the righteous would immediately go to upon death. This idea would not survive long. In fact, Jewish thought on the afterlife is anything but a consensus, and it would not be an error to say that the Hebrew religion places much more emphasis on living a good and righteous life here and now. While there are plenty of sources regarding the rules and observances Hebrews must follow in life, a strict code about beliefs in the afterlife does not exist. One reason for this was the medieval Jewish philosopher-scholar Maimonides, who, in his important Mishnah Torah, argues that humans, despite being called to have ardent faith, were entirely unprepared to, as mortals trapped in the material plane, know much of anything about God or the afterlife, and should choose to place their focus on what they're capable of knowing and living a holy life without expectation of reward. Nonetheless, a number of unique beliefs and practices exist about the different amenities a soul enjoys as it prepares to be reborn in the Olam Haba. In the 16th century, it became a custom to recite Kaddish for 11 months after the death of one's parents to alleviate the punishments due to them in Gehenna, a place all imperfect souls pass through to receive purification with a maximum 12-month sentence. The operative idea being, it would be rude to suspect one's own parents got the full sentence. This section of time for the newly deceased is called the Habut HaKaver, or pangs of the grave. What happens during this time is not entirely dissimilar to what is spoken of in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. In the beginning stages, the disembodied spirit of the deceased suffers great confusion and visits places and people they were familiar with in life, attempting to interact with them. Of course, they can't. Some say the angel of death then comes to sit upon the grave and calls the spirit back to their body by speaking its name. Rabbi Yitzhak Luria describes the process as 4 angels coming to the grave of the deceased, deepening it to the depth of a man, reuniting the soul with the body as it was in life, and then beating the living kelipa, or shells, of impurity from the soul with fire, the same way one beats dust off a blanket. The harder the kelipa clings to the soul, the longer and harder the beating. Once the soul has been purified, it awaits physical reincarnation in Gan Eden, a temporary spiritual paradise and waiting room for the world to come. I thought that was surprisingly Buddhist, that in Orthodox Hebrew belief, when you die, you get stomped. I mean, maybe not by demons, but when they're doing the stomping, what's the difference?
Stomped by angels.
It sounds like whatever your indulgence was is also maybe how you get tortured in Gehenna. Like if you ate too many Reese's Pieces, they just put hot coals in your mouth instead.
Hot coals shaped like Reese's Pieces.
Of course.
That's not peanut butter.
And they will show you a wrong way to eat the Reese's.
It melts your mouth as opposed to melting in your mouth.
Oh, the peanut butter!
I think it's a little interesting that there's this great confusion when the soul is separated from the body. I like the way the Egyptians describe the Ba and the Ka relationship in the Book of the Dead.
I mean, they get beaten as well in the duat.
Can you imagine going through all the trouble of dying and the first thing that happens when you show up is getting ass kicking? This is why we need religion.
Generally, people tend to think that the Egyptians were obsessed with the afterlife, and this is largely because the majority of artifacts and texts recovered from Egypt have been from tombs or in regards to funerary beliefs and practices. Throughout the pyramid texts and other funerary texts of ancient Egypt, the ascension of the deceased to heaven is often thoroughly described, as well as being accompanied by invocations, spells, maps, and guidelines. Multiple heavens are described throughout the text as well, including the renowned paradise called Sekhet Aru, or Aru, which is better known simply as the Field of Reeds or the Field of Rushes. The Field of Reeds was considered to have been created by Ra, Atum, after resolving to not destroy humans. In the ancient texts, however, there are actually 2 fields that are described. The Field of Reeds, called Sekhet Aru, and the Field of Offerings, Sekhet Hetep. One field was considered to be in the eastern horizon as a place of purification, and the other field in the western horizon being the paradise of the afterlife. Both fields were so intrinsically linked that many scholars describe Sekhet Hetep as simply being a title of the Field of Reeds, as opposed to being a separate field. Regardless, Aru, the paradise full of reeds, is considered to be lush. It's beautiful, it's bountiful, all the pleasure and serenity you would ever need is right there. It's a place where all of one's desires may be fulfilled. It has an abundance of fruit trees and grains. It's also well watered and refreshing. Utterance 210 of the Pyramid text states, O ye judges, ye have taken Unas unto yourselves. Let him eat that which you eat. Let him drink that which ye drink. Let him live upon that which you live upon. Let your seat be his seat. Let his power be your power. Let the boat wherein he shall sail be your boat. Let him net birds in Aru. Let him possess running streams in Sekhet Hetep. And may he obtain his meat and his drink from you, O ye gods. May the water of Unas be of the wine which is of Ra. May he revolve in the sky like Ra, and may he pass over the sky like Thoth.
Is Unas a bunny? Yeah, I think the name Unas relates to being a bunny. Like he's the bunny pharaoh.
Yeah, it's related to Unifer. He's one of the pharaohs with that name relation. So the primary focus of any endgame heavenly depiction in these ancient Kemetic texts is that regardless of how it's described in the text, essentially you join the gods, you live in union with them, and among them as one of them. The Egyptian concept of heaven was said to have several gates. In regards to the Field of Reeds, they were called the Gates of Aru, each of which is guarded by deities to make sure that not just anyone can waltz on in. And this is a lot like how angels guard the gates of heaven in the Bible. A common theme for the Egyptian concept of heaven was to become an imperishable star, or Ku, in the body of Nut. Just as Osiris is said to personify the constellation of Orion as Sa, there was often a particular focus in the older texts on becoming an imperishable star among the northern stars, especially since they're considered to be constant stars. Essentially, since heaven as the afterlife is such a macrocosmic spiritual concept, it makes sense that ancient cultures attempted to relate it to the macrocosmic aspects of the observable universe.
No, only the Greeks do that.
I mean, there's a reason why we call the cosmos the heavens, right? It's a macrocosmic.
No, they worship cats. Aliens built the pyramids. Sorry.
The general notion was to ascend as a divine being, an expression of God, to become at one with God in the body of God. Without a tangible body for God, the metaphor of becoming a star in the body of Newt is a sufficient explanation. In nearly all of the titles of the heavenly places in ancient Egypt, the titles could be considered as being within the body of Newt. For example, the Field of Reeds, the Winding Waterway, or the Nurse Canal might not have been used as literal places, but rather as metaphorical references to what could be considered the divine goddess's birth canal, or the womb in which the individual soul is reborn.
I want to go.
I find the poetic spin helpful. Maimonides spent a lot of time telling people that God did not have a body and to stop thinking of it that way.
I mean, it's hard to describe what's indescribable aside from doing your best to find some kind of metaphorical analogy. Some of the maps for the deceased in the ancient texts, they included the locations of the supposed mansions of the gods, such as the mansion of Osiris in the field of Hetep, or the mansion of Thoth in the place of Ma'at, or truth, as well as a map to follow the path of the sun god Ra. The metaphorical drinking of the milk from Hathor, the heavenly cow, or eating the fruits of the heavenly sycamore tree, they're all symbolic of the abundance and fulfilling nature of heaven. References to the winding waterway between worlds as flooded is also akin to the fluidity, allowing passage to the deceased so that they may be ferried across these waters. In the descriptions, the deceased traverses the firmament, demolishing the oppressive ramparts of Shu, and ascends to the heavens. Regardless of the processes that are described in the many variations of the text, I think it's always a process in which they are to be born again.
This is quite a bit different from the Greek conception of the afterlife, where you're not born again, like you're stuck.
Or maybe you're born again to be stuck.
Born to be stuck. So going over to ancient Greece, around 1000 AD, during the Homeric era, the conception of the universe, with a few subdivisions, had three parts: heaven, the sea, and the underworld, ruled by the principal deities Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, respectively. In terms of divine jurisdiction, the Earth's surface belonged to Zeus, which means the domain we normally inhabit is just the lowest section of sky. Thus, to an ancient Greek, it would not be untrue to claim that life was lived in heaven. If you ask Zeus himself, he might tell you that the kingdom of God is not just already here, but it's his, having bested his brothers Hades and Poseidon in drawing lots for it. From that point, all the earth covered in water belonged to Poseidon, and the earth below the surface, rich in jewels and precious metals, belonged to Hades. Everything else belonged to Zeus, who would rule from his throne at Mount Olympus.
I've always kind of liked that statement that the ocean is the world's largest graveyard.
It's referred to as unharvested. So they think of it as a place where there's resources, but we can't get them. And Hades is similar that way. It's like got all the jewels, all the gold, but it's hard to get.
Yeah, and once you go there to try to get it, it's very hard to get back out. It's just the rules. It's the program.
I think this is a really interesting way to look at it, like you're standing on the earth, but your body, being that you're standing on earth, is surrounded by sky and thus a part of heaven.
Life is heaven, bro. But for the Greeks, you didn't go to Mount Olympus when you died. Nay, not even for heroes or the products of Zeus's many non-consensual encounters. While early depictions of the afterlife are universally gloomy, shadowy fragments of normal life, each soul was equally bound by the law of bearded Hades, who, though wise and indifferent, also made no exceptions. Although a ghastly addition, here the motif of precious jewels and fantastic gates denying entry or exit become foundational to the ideas of the afterlife. Even if it was dreary, dark, and promised no return, there was considerable concern placed upon getting in. It was common for family members of the dead to place a coin, or Charon's abol, into the mouth of the corpse to assure that the boatman, Charon, would carry the dead beyond the body of water where they arrived after death. If your family failed to perform proper burial rites, you might become stranded on the riverbanks.
Never get off the boat.
I don't know, this sounds a lot like Death Stranding to me.
It really does, because when you die, you end up on a beach, which the old paintings of Hades, it looks like that. It's not like underground per se, it's just a big opening of water where you have to cross and then find the other place. Well, early sources seem to suggest that even getting this far was a fortunate accomplishment reserved for the few. Ideas about the afterlife grew to encompass more comfortable amenities for heroes, children of gods, and later, the righteous. These souls, having been judged worthy by dead historic personages such as Minos, king of Crete, Acis, son of Zeus and mythological king of Aegina, and wise Rhadamanthus, who was also a child of Zeus and mythological king of Crete, enjoyed a short ferry ride to the idyllic banks of the Elysian Fields, or, by the time of Hesiod, the Fortunate Isles, which were said to exist in the Western Ocean at the edge of the world. In Homer's Odyssey, Elysium is described as a place where life is easiest for men, no snow is there, nor heavy storm, nor even rain, but ever does ocean send up blasts of the shrill blowing west wind that they may give cooling to men. So a sea breeze by the beach. A few hundred years later, Hesiod confirms the amenities the residents of Elysium enjoy.
And they live untouched by sorrow in the islands of the blessed, along the shore of deep swirling ocean, happy heroes for whom the grain-giving earth bears honey-sweet fruit, flourishing thrice a year, far from the deathless gods, and Kronos rules over them.
So a pretty good time.
Sounds like they have a high electric bill if they keep the AC on all the time.
They live near the ocean. They don't need AC.
I think that's just part of the Matrix. There's a big AC there.
It just runs on holiness.
When the compressor rattles, the earth shaketh. By the time of Pindar, in 500 BC, it was written that
The good receive a life free from toil, not scraping with the strength of their arms the earth, nor the water of the sea, for the sake of a poor sustenance. But in the presence of the honored gods, those who gladly kept their oaths enjoy a life without tears, while the others undergo a toil that is unbearable to look at. Those who have persevered 3 times on either side, to keep their souls free from all wrongdoing, follow Zeus's road to the end, to the tower of Kronos, where ocean breezes blow around the island of the blessed, and flowers of gold are blazing, some from splendid trees on land, while water nurtures others. With these wreaths and garlands of flowers they entwine their hands according to the righteous counsels of Rhadamanthus, whom the great father, the husband of Rhea, whose throne is above all others, keeps close beside him as his partner.
Sounds like a gay old time to me.
by this point, it's basically Christian heaven, except God has a wife. From all accounts, it sounds like whatever you enjoyed in life will be available to you in Elysium, just without needing to work, and the weather's always perfect.
That sounds nice.
Cronus ruled Elysium sounds to me the closest you get to Christian heaven, like when we first think of it.
Yeah, on paper, that's the equal, straight up.
But then things take a turn. As we discussed in the Primordial Waters of the Abyss episode, these descriptions of Elysium were written down during the dawning in the West of the natural sciences, which Thales had grandfathered by stating that everything was made of water, a truly revolutionary pronouncement in a universe quite literally understood previously to be composed of spirit beings. Alongside Thales was Anaximander, who, according to a 10th century Byzantine encyclopedia, was actually a student, successor, and possibly relative of Thales. Anaximander was a mathematician and astronomer who was able to demonstrate 3 facts which changed astronomy and philosophy forever.
1. The celestial bodies make full circles, passing under the earth as well as over it. 2. The earth floats free and unsupported in the center of the cosmos.
What?
3. The celestial bodies are not all at the same distance from the earth.
What?
So it's not turtles.
I thought it was turtles all the way down.
There might be one there, but it's not all turtles.
Now, unlike many of his contemporaries, Anaximander was also famous for writing his ideas down. Some claim he was the first philosopher to do so.
That's kind of funny to think about.
He's just the first guy like, well, I'm gonna write this down, idiot. According to Anaximander, the world was not supported by anything. It was probably hockey puck shaped and suspended without support in what we would now call space. Although it's hard to say for certain how direct the link was, Pythagoras inherited a great deal of work from Anaximander, and according to some, was even his pupil. And while we also don't know who first proposed it, the cult of Pythagoras proposed the earth was spherical, which was adopted by Plato and his school of thought, as was meant to be cataloged in the Timaeus, the culmination of Plato's life's work and the foundational model for all cosmology in the West until the time of Copernicus.
No episode's complete without mentioning the Timaeus.
It's really not. It feels like all of our episodes relate to the Timaeus in one form or another. And of course, one reason is because it's so funny, The other is because it's the culmination of Plato's entire life's work. So it's here in Plato's Timaeus that we see a shift in the afterlife's final destination from the underworld to abodes in the sky. It's also here that we begin to see the imagery of wheels, fire, and holy animals, which would become a centerpiece of the New Testament's description of heaven, along with the idea of a benevolent creator who wished to perfect his creation. What makes it remarkably different, however, is that the creator is not the measuring stick for his own creations, like in the Bible, but the creator's work is an imitation of what he perceives of the eternal and works from its patterns as a template.
That sounds like golden ratio.
The term they use is demiurgos, or public artificer. He's making this stuff for the people. He makes models, mock-ups, simulations, you see. Where even in the Timaeus, the creator's creations are described as being a little, well, they're not as good as the eternal. They die and fall apart, and they're never exactly what their true essence is at any one moment. Likewise, it's easy to see how Gnostics, both ancient and modern, use this idea to conceptualize of the demiurge and the black iron prison, etc., etc. So, on this idea, it says,
Thus far and until the birth of time, the created universe was made in the likeness of the original. But inasmuch as all animals were not yet comprehended therein, it was still unlike. What remained, the creator then proceeded to fashion after the nature of the pattern. Now, as in the ideal animal, the mind perceives ideas, or species of a certain nature and number. He thought that this created animal ought to have species of like nature and number. There are 4 such. One of them is the heavenly race of gods. Another, the race of birds, whose way is in the air. The third, the watery species. And the fourth, the pedestrian and land creatures. Of the heavenly and divine, he created the greater part out of fire, that they might be the brightest of all things and the fairest to behold. And he fashioned them after the likeness of the universe in the figure of a circle, and made them follow the intelligent motion of the Supreme, distributing them over the whole circumference of heaven, which was to be a true cosmos, or glorious world, spangled with them all over, the stars. And he gave to each of them 2 movements. The first, a movement on the same spot after the same manner, whereby they ever continue to think consistently the same thoughts about the same things. The second, a forward movement in which they are controlled by the revolution of the same and the like, but by the other 5 motions they were unaffected, in order that each of them might attain the highest perfection. And for this reason the fixed stars were created, to be divine and eternal animals, ever abiding and revolving after the same manner and on the same spot. Let's break this down a bit. So there's 4 elemental classes of animals, and the fiery ones, those are the stars and the constellations. They revolve like wheels around a spherical earth. Here, some of the images associated with biblically accurate angels have begun to form, which are posited here as our immediate overlords, creators, and most importantly, the collectors of our souls in death, designating the afterlife of mortals to mansions in the sky. Now, when all of them, both those who visibly appear in the revolutions, as well as those other gods who are of a more retiring nature, had come into being, the creator of the universe addressed them in these words. Gods, children of gods, who are my work, and of whom I am the artificer and father, I did it. My creations are indissoluble, if I so will. All that is bound may be undone, but only an evil being would wish to undo that which is harmonious and happy. Wherefore, since ye are but creatures, ye are not altogether immortal and indissoluble, but ye shall certainly not be dissolved, nor be liable to the fate of death, having in my will a greater and mightier bond than those which ye bound at the time of your birth. Now listen to my instructions. 3 tribes of mortal beings remain to be created. Without them, the universe will not be complete, for it will not contain every kind of animal which it ought to contain, if it is to be perfect. On the other hand, if they were created by me and received life at my hands, they would be on an equality with the gods. In order then that they may be mortal, and that this universe may be truly universal, do ye, according to your natures, betake yourselves to the formation of animals, imitating the power which was shown by me in creating you, the part of them worthy of the name immortal, which is called divine, and is the guiding principle of those who are willing to follow justice, and you, of that divine part, I will myself sow the seed, and having made a beginning, I will hand the work over to you. And do ye then interweave the mortal with the immortal, and make and beget living creatures, and give them food, and make them grow, and receive them again in death.
That's really descriptive, and it sounds like a Pokemon song to me almost. Gotta live one with these animals because they're what inspired God to create you in a way. I think that's really cool.
It is almost as if God of the Pokemon universe, whatever you could conceive that as being, gave the job to the legendary Pokemon to create humans. And that's why humans like them so much.
There are Pokemon now, after many generations, that are like cosmic forces themselves, like time, space. Pretty awesome.
It's also a bit like Dungeons and Dragons, right? Where if you're committed to a god and you do all the stuff that you're supposed to do for that god, when you die, you go to their abode specifically, right?
Yeah, there's a whole, planar realms beyond, life and death that's in some campaigns that you can go there physically, and there's bars in certain ones where you can meet all these different cosmic entities that are just visiting your other realm, your other plane.
So as I mentioned before, these angelic beings, which are said to create us, which we are said to borrow of their nature, are described as archons, which means ruler. And they're conceived of oppressively directing our fate, which is an appropriate attribution if they're related to the abode of stars. Because as we learned in our astrological magic episode, they determine your fate. The stars determine who you are, what's going to happen. And so that's why magicians use magic to either enhance the things they like or to diminish, reduce, or cancel out the things they don't.
Even on a smaller scale, it makes sense if you only think about the sun and how the sun directs the fate of the earth, basically, and what can and cannot grow. This is how you end up with cultures that worship the sun, right? The sun controls the life of the earth. So when you're looking for God, it makes sense to look for something that's greater than yourself. What has rulership over your life? And you look up to the heavens, to the cosmos, you see the sun, and then you see what's beyond the sun are all these other stars. It just keeps going.
I thought it was interesting that our idea of the afterlife being in heaven is not necessarily informed by the old religion, but because science wanted to go there.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
We pointed our telescopes, we're like, that's where we're from!
I think that idea kind of echoes in the Bifrost Bridge or Ameno Ukiashi, which is a magic bridge to Takamagahara, which is the abode of the gods in Shintoism in Japan. This roadway to the physical place up in the stars. Heaven isn't another dimension to some. It's just no, it's literally that place, right? That star, that's where you go when you die. You can go there physically if you go on this magic bridge or magic, cave or something in some cultures. And I just want to say, if you're a modern magician and you're looking into all these old religions, when you accept that it is another dimension and a physical place at the same time, because it's more and more developing sciences are kind of proving these ancient cultures right in one way or another, it's really badass because it's they're not wrong about these things.
It's impressive the amount of overlap between the concepts and then what you see in the actual macrocosmic universe.
Well, this goes with the idea that the more we learn by what we would call now science, the more we expand our mythologies and our religious ideas.
It just makes me think of the astronauts that have reported seeing these crazy angelic beings in space.
Yeah, what's up with that? They don't let us know about that.
They go to space and they see angels, and it's this question, are there really angels in heaven? It's well, regardless of which heaven you're talking about, whether it's the actual cosmos or this afterlife, apparently there are. Angels in heaven. Angels in space.
And to invoke Crowley for a second, there's even angels in your tarot cards. And famously in his work, The Vision and the Voice, the way he describes some of the environments he goes through as he's scrying and looking into the shoe stone, it's very heaven-like. And then an angel appears and it's like, I am the angel of this aether. My name is blah, blah, blah in Enochian or Greek or whatever. Tells him in so many different names, all its versions throughout time. To me, it's like, okay, this is like a little slice of heaven then. If this is like, you know, this angel's little house that you're visiting for a second out in the desert. He was even in Mexico for some of them, which I find really interesting. But I just like to think that, you know, even if you're in the astral or you're going like into the mental space, that there's like even drug angels or, you know, trance angels that are like, yeah, no, dude, you're in my house. Like, hey, you can chill, but you got to relax. All right. And I feel like they really do strong arm you into their methods or you're going to have a bad time. But somebody like Crowley was able to extract artistic or religious information from his experiences. And I think that's what makes him one of the better mages of our time.
In so much as angels are said to be messengers of God's will, and that God set all the stars in their place and set all of their motions, it dovetails well with the idea that angels don't have free will. They're just doing the will of creation. They're just doing God's work, which is, as it says here in the Timaeus, what they were told to do.
So I guess when you invoke that energy, you're going to get a little taste of that do what you're told to do. I don't know, maybe that's just how it is when you're touching upon heaven or thinking about these concepts, even mathematically. It's very ordered. And I guess that's the very idea that Crowley was trying to cut through, was finding your will in that and not falling into that trap, but still visiting heaven.
Which since the time of Maimonides has been downplayed. It used to be more of a thing where you could follow in Enoch's footsteps and maybe become an angel yourself if you followed the right operations. And even if that wasn't your aim, you could at least create your Merkava or your chariot and go visit heaven and see for yourself what's going on. And that seems to be the legacy that occultists and magicians have inherited.
So astral travel more often, like Enoch.
Or the very angry and disappointed, seething,
Helping John of Patmos, who was so butthurt that heaven astral projected to him. If you'd like to hear about Christian heaven, Muslim heaven, Aztec heaven, and most importantly,
the burning question, is there sex in heaven?
The definitive answer, please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will get you access to not just this show in its extended format. You'll get all our shows in their extended formats. I'll even send you a 5x5 vinyl sticker of our cover art and the secret keys to our Discord server, where you can help us eat carrots and shoot lasers.
Pew, pew, pew.